Hello and welcome to Media Freedom Rapid Response interview series. My name is Elena Rodina. I'm coordinator of Media Freedom Rapid Response, or MFRR in short, which is a consortium of 6 press freedom organizations led by the European Center for Press and Media Freedom. We track, monitor, and react to violations of media freedom in the European Union, member states, and candidate countries. We also provide legal and practical support, advocacy, and information to protect journalists and media workers. And today we will speak about press and media freedom in Sweden. I'm thrilled to welcome Eric Larsson. Eric has worked as a journalist for over 25 years, with the past 15 years focused on international reporting. He has been a reporter, editor, and editor-in-chief. Since 2018, he has served on the board of Reporters Without Borders Sweden, and he has been its chairman since 2023. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you very much.
So I would like to start on a positive note, and my first question would be, Sweden is among the top countries in ratings on press and media freedom. For instance, Reporters Without Borders placed it third from the top in its World Press Freedom Index in 2024. So what do you think, Eric, Sweden does and Swedish journalists do well in order to maintain this high level of freedom and independence?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of historical, but even geographical coincidence, and even some, it's a little bit by chance, coincidence factors. I mean, if you think of it, Sweden has always been a large country with a small population. So I go back 1,000 years now to the age of the Vikings or something like that. But I mean, for example, Germany, you have 85 million people lives in Germany, and it's only 360,000 square meters. Sweden has 10 million people, and we have 450,000 square meters. So we are actually, in our area is 25% bigger than Germany. And but what does that actually mean if you think of it? It means that historically farmers managed their own affairs. As the king and the landlords, they couldn't control everything as they could in more populated areas. So we created a kind of social movement, was very good for the democracy to established. And it also means that we really early get this Press Freedom Act. In 1766, we got the world's first Press Freedom Act in Sweden. And after that, it has been more or less coincidence also that had made that the Swedish politicians and organizations has had quite a positive attitude against media, because it was the media and could check what the power was doing. And nowadays we have also a very strong laws to protect press freedom. So that's the positive things.
Wow, okay, so that's really good to hear. And now on a bit less of a positive note, despite Sweden being in a really good place in regards to media freedom, there are some concerning reports that also we here at MFRR are getting from Sweden lately. It seems to maybe form a certain trend. It seems that journalists are receiving threats and are being intimidated. For instance, the latest example is TV4 channel being threatened after publishing an investigation into the troll army of the far-right Swedish Democrats. So could you maybe first unpack the story a little bit, what happened with TV4 and its employees, and perhaps also reflect on the situation and suggest why do you think this is happening? And is it just like a one-time incident, or could it potentially become a trend?
Shortly, it was a reporter who was investigating what the Swedish Democrat Party has been doing and how they worked online. And he soon found out that it has kind of a troll factory who was attacking political opponents, but also political friends who this party didn't believe act as they should. And this reporter, he works undercover at this troll factory for 1 year or something like that. So they had very unique material. So, but to understand this, I think we have to first look at what kind of party is the Swedish Democrat. And the Swedish Democrats, they were founded in 1988. And the party was the founders of this party. They were very active far-right extremists, and several of them were linked to fascist and Nazi movements. And today the party is the third biggest party in Sweden. And the party has changed now. They have cleaned up. Many of those who was really close linked to the Nazi party has quit, but they are still very highly controversial in many issues, and especially when it comes to migration and crimes, and the party they are really close to the Swedish government. They are supporting the government and have a very close collaboration with the government. And as you said, in May, just before the EU election, TV4, the channel TV4, was publishing this. And this led to that the party leader was accusing the established media of being allied with the social democrat. And he was just dismissing this as it was not a troll factory, he said, and it was only a joke, it was satire, and etc., etc. And he was attacking the established media at that time. But it was not a very successful tactics, because in the election, the Swedish Democrats performed quite poorly. And now we can see a little slightly change in tones from this party. But they are a little bit more, they're not attacking media as hard right now as they used to. But I don't think there are any big changes, because they are highly critical against established media. And on a platform like X and other social media platform, many other supporters are very aggressive and attacking journalists. And we can see a lot of online harassments on journalism, and some of them claims that they are close to the Swedish Democrat Party. So there's a really serious challenge right now for journalists, and it's quite hard to be on X, for example, there are many of those supporters who are behaving quite aggressively against media.
So just to reiterate, this has serious consequences for journalists themselves, both online and, from what I understand, offline as well. I read that TV4 journalists were advised to not wear identification publicly, because then they could be actually attacked in, physical world. Could you comment on that? So actual threats.
It's true. The environment and the threats is very worrying right now against journalism, and much more of the budget for the public media, or public service media, and also the private media, is going to hide the security for journalism. And so we can't spend so much on journalism. We have to spend it on more security issues. And it's a growing problem. And in media organizations like Reporters Without Borders and other, the media trade union in Sweden, journalist trade union in Sweden, and many others is now talking about this. And we have a dialogue with the government also, what we can do to reduce the risk. But unfortunately, I think it will take a long time before we can change this trend right now.
Wow, that is quite worrying. And I also read the statistics that the recent study by the Union of Swedish Journalists shows that 39% of reporters in Sweden admitted to self-censoring to avoid threats and harassment, and especially when it comes to reporting on the topics of racism and immigration. And I just wanted to ask you about this chilling effect. So not only TV4 journalists, but other journalists in Sweden, do you think they really feel this chilling effect? And
Yeah.
also, can you notice this, like being very deeply immersed in media field in Sweden?
Yeah, and I would like to add, if you're covering climate issues, you have a really big problem. I know a lot of journalists, they don't want to do this anymore, and because uh, they get attacked, online threats, etc., etc., because it's a very sensitive issue. Some people think that you should not report about this, and it's the established media is segregating this kind of issue. So it's extremely worrying, actually. And if you look at it, as I mentioned in the beginning, we have a long tradition of a strong press freedom. We have strong laws for it. But if if you look closer to the Reporters Without Borders Index, you can also see that we have different indicators. And the security indicator has been a problem for Sweden for many, many years. We are in the third place in the index overall. But when you look at the security indicator, we are in 22nd place.
Oh,
So we have been low for many, many years. So it's very worrying. For a couple of years ago, we had a report that said that 30% of the Swedish journalists have received threats the last year. And a big majority of the Swedish journalists has been insulted or in different way on social media. So the online climate in Sweden is very, very toxic right now. So we're facing this. It's a big problem.
okay. And to sum it up, what do you think international and national press and media freedom organizations, journalists, and power holders, and ultimately the society itself in Sweden could do to change these dynamics?
It's a hard question. But I think to tackle this harassment, I mean, we need action both nationally in Sweden, because we see this as it's a major problem in Sweden, but also internationally. And if you think of it, I mean, it's something that's a social media platform. I mean, they must take more responsibility to stop this harassment. And we need some clear rules, and they need to be much more faster to response when journalists and other groups is attacked. And it's a very hard balance to do this, because you don't want to interfere with the freedom of speech as well. But we have to address this problem, and we have to put pressure on the social media platform. But I also think it will be very, very important now to hear politicians. And I mean, many politicians, they talk very beautiful about support to press freedom and media, etc., etc. But they actually has to go up and criticize the power, the movement, who are acting very aggressively against journalism and media. And I don't really see that right now. I think that's a problem here in Sweden, but it's also a problem in Europe, because politician has to be much more um, acting much more stronger on this issue. So finally, we can also increase support for journalists and providing digital security course, or we can have help the victim of this online harassment.
Indeed. So it's good that we have some plan of action to make things better for journalists. And thank you, Eric. Thank you for your input. So this is a very important conversation that we will continue. And thank you to our listeners.